My name is Alfonzo Terrell. I was born in Alexandria, Virginia. I'm also known as Kenneth Alfonso Scales. There's a story with that I might get into later. My nickname was Butch, and which folks still call me. Uh, I lived in the subdivision of Seminary in Alexandria. I was raised by my grandparents, Beatrice and Jacob Terrell. My mother is Maureen Terrell Scales, and my father was Hampton Howard. Uh, as I said, I lived in Seminary, and my grandmother raised me. I was with her from the time I was 5 years old until I went into the Air Force. But I lived in the Seminary community, and I used to get around at that time. They used to call it the country, but we had good times in the country. I used to roam around as a youngster in seminary. There were like three main streets I can tell you about. King Street, on which I lived, Braddock Road, and Quaker Lane, where the most African Americans lived in Seminary. That's where we lived on. We lived on King Street, we lived on Braddock Road, and we lived on Quaker Lane. Off of Quaker Lane were a couple dirt road streets called Woods Lane and Johnson's Lane. Woods Place, which is where Woods Lane was, is where my grandparents are the new renovation. That's where that is now. But coming up in seminary, I've been a member. I'm a life member of the Oakland Baptist Church, really. And we had good times in seminary. And the group of people, some still here, and I know you talked with Jim Lewis, who lived on Quaker Lane, but there were about 30 houses on King Street there, and I'm not going to, actually I can name each and every one. I won't go into that, where the Henry family lived, the Lewis family, the Russ family, part of the Wanzer family, and the Belt family. On the other side of the street was the Terrell family, the Sims family, the Douglas family, Craven family, and Mr. Crone, who lived up by the church on King Street. And growing up, we used to go around what they call Woods Lane. If we went somewhere, they would say, I'm going around the lane. And we knew the lane was Woods Lane, where the other families lived. And most of the families on Woods Lane were in the Wanzer family, going down that street there, about 7, 8 houses. And where I lived on King Street, there was a path behind our house where we would cut through the path and go up the hill to Woods Lane. And there was a school there. There was a 2-room school there, and I think it closed down in 1951, somewhere. It might be 1950. And my grandmother actually was a substitute teacher there. It was a 2-room school. And I believe Miss Stevenson or Miss Ross, they were the teachers there who later taught at Charles Houston. But that old school there, I never got to go. I can remember as a little boy, about 5 years old, I would go and sit on the step. And then I would go back down the hill. At that time, as I said, it was like country. And I would go down the hill back to where I lived. And I used to, as a young fella, I roamed all of seminary, really, up the fort where our church cemetery is, and off of Woods Place where most of them, as I said, the Wanzers live. We interacted. We had good times. We would, go through the woods, and we also not associated, but the folks on Johnson's Lane, or everybody knew everybody. And if you came to seminary, everybody believed that we were all some kin. And there's some kind of way we are all connected in seminary, all these families. And that made us kind of, I guess, unique in that area and during that time. I also went to Parker Gray High School. Parker Gray High School was the only African-American high school in Alexandria. It existed from 1920 to 1965. And I graduated from there in 1962. And the uniqueness of uniqueness of Parker Gray High School is that it being the only African American school during that segregated time, the teachers who taught there were older, but they all made us feel like we could do and be whatever we wanted to be. We could accomplish whatever we wanted to, even though we were under the Jim Crow era. But the school itself, right now, the school was torn down, but we still have memories. And actually, we're about to do a gala. We're about to do a banquet for the Parker Gray Legacy coming up, and it's just we have great memories of the school, of the high school, the Parker Gray Bulldogs. But in Seminary, where I live, we used to go to Sunday school. Folks in my age group, and I'm be 80 in 2 months. We all went to Sunday school. I don't care what you did on Saturday or during the week you went to school, but on Sunday morning, you went to Sunday school. And when we got out of Sunday school, you didn't have to stay to church. Some of us didn't, but I did. You would go across the street to the Donson store, which we call the Little Store. It was across the street. Next to that store on King Street and Quaker Lane was a grocery store. It was called the Shirley Food. That's what we used to call it, the Shirley Food Store. And that's where folks bought their groceries. The shopping center hadn't been built yet up in Bradley. And as I said, we roamed up and down Quaker Lane, the fort. We would go up to the fort to go through the woods just to explore. And there were several houses up at the fort, which is now the park. Fort Ward Park was actually a fort years ago in the 1800s when the the Union Army had a fort there. And there was also some folks there that owned slaves. And when the fort closed down and cleared out, that's how the black community was formed. The folks that still lived up there and that came down from the Fork Hill County area. Some came down to work at the Virginia Theological Seminary and the Episcopal High School. And from that grew the fort, and also from that grew the seminary community. And in the seminary community, they used to have King Street and a place called Bush Hill, which is around where Quaker Lane and Johnson's Lane and all of that was. And as I said, we could go from house to house. Everybody knew everybody, and we just enjoyed each other. That's the way it was. My grandparents, rather. My grandmother was the church clerk, as I remember, for about 30 years. And I spent a lot of time at the church. I spent a lot of time at Oakland Baptist Church, and I'm still a member at Oakland Baptist Church. As a matter of fact, I'm an associate minister there now. But the church, we gathered there quite a bit. And we used to go every year. The church would treat the Sunday school students to a trip to Carr's Beach, which is in Annapolis, and we thought that was a big thing. They would have a bus for the adults and a bus for the children, and we would load up, and they'd take picnic baskets and inner tubes on the bus, and we would go down there and just to have a good time, to picnic. Carr's and Sparrows Beach, and I can remember later on when I was still a teenager, a friend of mine, Gerald Wanzer, we got an adult to charter a bus for us, and we chartered the bus, went to Sparrows Beach to see Billy Stewart, Murray Wells, and Jerry Butler, and the bus was so crowded, we actually had to put chairs in the aisle, but we enjoyed things like that and the camaraderie that we had in seminary. We were, as I said, it was a very tight family place. The Wanzers, the Bradbys, the Lewises, and all the folks that lived there. As I said, everybody knew everybody. Like any other place, we had got into some mischief every now and then and did some things, but basically, not a lot of us got into any serious trouble. And along the way, still, we kept that camaraderie. We still connect with each other. When seminary As I said, it was kind of divided up into Bush Hill, the Fort, and King Street. When redevelopment came in I want to say 65 or 62, somewhere along in there, when I graduated, I had gone in the Air Force, but the redevelopment project was called Mudtown. However, Seminary was not called Mudtown when I grew up. The development called it because I guess it was a catchy name for it, but it wasn't really called Mudtown because the Mudtown was around near Quaker Lane and the Fort because of the water when it rained came down the hill. And as I said, we lived up the street. I lived up the street from what they call Chinkapin. Chinkapin was like a white project, and we lived up on King Street. And right now, I lived at 3330 King Street. And the city high school, the former T.C. Williams High School, carries the address of my home, 3330 King Street, where my grandparents lived. As I said, we enjoyed everything about seminary, and coming along and being raised in seminary. I don't want to tell you we felt special, but as we grew, there was a tight neighborhood. And as I said, everybody knew everybody. And along the way, those relationships we still have those relationships.